He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome to Coast View, the show that celebrates the men and women who are working so hard to make coastal Mississippi a better place to live, work, and play. Today we have a great show. We're going to get an update from Brian and Marie Sanderson about the Mississippi 30-Day Fund and just, talking through that. Now, basically, if you don't know about the Mississippi 30-Day Fund, it's a nonprofit that they set up that is designed at helping small businesses who have been impacted by the coronavirus. And it's an incredible fund where 100% of the proceeds go back to the businesses. And we've had a couple of shows about this. We talked to them about the impetus for it early on. We had 4 governors on. We'll talk a little bit about how special that show was. And so today we're going to be getting an update from Brian and Marie. So good morning, Brian and Marie. How are you guys doing?
Good morning. Ricky.
Thanks for having us.
Good to see you. Hey, before we get to the Mississippi 30-Day Fund, I'm curious, how's life going for you guys? You both do a lot of work in Washington and around the country. You've been using technology. You've been proving that technology has really enabled us in this pandemic world. But, let's, Marie, what's life like for you these days?
Well, we're using a lot of technology, and we talk about that a lot, but Zoom all the time. I think it's brought us closer in an odd way to some of our clients and our colleagues because we're seeing each other's homes. I stepped away from my computer briefly yesterday during a Zoom, and I heard them say, "Look, there's Superman." And I quickly remembered that my 3-year-old had on Superman pajamas, which meant he was in the camera view waving at my clients, and I had this moment of, but they enjoyed that. It is nice to see the human side of people that they're used to only hearing their voices. And so I think that's been, if there's a silver lining, one of the special parts of technology and this new reality.
Yeah, I hear that. I think we've even talked about it before, but I hear that on the show all the time that people, for the most part, I mean, listen, there's no substitute for human face-to-face contact and being able to be together. But what we've found is through Zoom and Skype and other technologies, we're able to actually read body language and, as you pointed out, see more about their lives that you probably didn't see before. But people are using it. The economic development people tell me, for example, that they're actually having longer conversations with CEOs and others than they had before because they, in the prior life, they would spend so much time in airports and traveling and whatever. They're not doing that now. So there's actually more quality time available to have conversations. I hear that just almost every day. I mean, how technology has really enabled communication at a deeper level. How about you, Brian? What's up with you these days?
Yeah, much of the same. The last time I was on an airplane was March 13th. And, since then, we've been doing everything, as Marie said, by Skype and Zoom and conference calls, which was a lot of, 90% of what we did before with obviously a good bit of travel thrown in. So to some degree, it's the same, but to your point, a little bit deeper and more frequently.
Well, that's good. And, you have 3 kids and you've had an opportunity to spend more time with your kids. And used to they're like batons passing in a marathon. You guys are having to coordinate and do all this, magic. I don't know how you make it work, but you've been able to make it work. And you're a living testament to you can choose the town you want to live in and find a way to make it work, and both of you have done that through your businesses. So congratulations. Hey, so why don't we do this? Why don't we update people? Before we do an update, let's kind of lay the groundwork again. What is the Mississippi 30-Day Fund? Where did it come from? And then we'll go into some more details about what's happening these days.
Sure. Well, we learned about the Virginia 30-Day Fund, which was the first 30-Day Fund, through some of my partners at one of my firms and a good friend, Pete and Burson Snyder, who created the Virginia 30-Day Fund. He's a venture capitalist and entrepreneur who said, I want to give back to my community, and he stood up this program. At the time, a number of other states recognized the work that he was doing and started funds in a few other states, Colorado, Arkansas, Pennsylvania. And Brian and I looked at each other and said, we must do this. Mississippians are one of the most charitable people in the country, and we need to provide that opportunity for Mississippians who want to give back also.
Well, that's excellent. And I guess the people, let's talk about the mechanism for a second, because as I mentioned at the outset, 100% of the proceeds that come into this fund go back out. There are no administrative costs. You guys are bearing the entire brunt of the administration costs, and you've got a lot of terrific volunteers that are involved in the efforts. So let's talk through the mechanism.
Yeah, so a lot of the back end items had been established by the Virginia 30-Day Fund. We paid for website and things to get started in Mississippi, but it's all 100% goes to the grant applicants and awarded businesses. We have a fantastic executive director, Julia Grant, who just recently graduated from the University of Mississippi. Will be going on to UVA Law School this fall. And then we have a fantastic advisory board, including yourself, Ricky. Thank you for joining that, from folks all across the state, diverse backgrounds. And then the four former governors have joined us on the honorary board, along with Mary Donald Haskell, former Miss Mississippi and actress and singer. So it's a great network of reach across the state. Couldn't do it without the great advisory board and our executive director. And then the students from Mississippi State and Ole Miss, the MBA students at State and law students at Ole Miss, who provide that initial net of review and applications, and then we process them from there.
Yeah, you mentioned the governors, and I mentioned that at the beginning. But so we had Mavis, we had Musgrove, Bryant, and Barber all at the same time. That probably hasn't happened before. I felt like it was kind of a historic meeting. So certainly they told their point of view about why they think a Mississippi 30-Day Fund is necessary and why they chose to be involved. But just the overall conversation about why they love the heart of Mississippi, what they miss most about being governor. You guys had the opportunity to be on that call with me, but that was really an interesting, enlightening conversation, wasn't it?
It was.
Absolutely. I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Marie. Yeah.
I would say, one of the common themes was the people of Mississippi. They talked a lot about the character of the people. They had a lot of common thoughts about who Mississippians are at their heart and at their core, and that kind of played out throughout the video.
Well, I've said so many times on the show that we learned after Katrina that buildings don't make a community, the people do. And as you pointed out, one of the most important things we discussed during that call is that Mississippians, as a general rule, especially when we stack ourselves up against, the other states in the United States, are some of the most generous people in the United States. Mm-hmm. They've been 1, 2, 3, 4, somewhere in that ranking year after year after year. And that's in spite of the fact that, the household income is not as high as a lot of states in the nation. So we've learned through our own adversity to kind of, stand up for each other and help each other. And we've seen that so many times after Katrina, after floods, after tornadoes, whatever now after the pandemic. We come to each other's assistance. And the Mississippi 30-Day Fund is just sort of kind of tells that story. Of why it's important to have something like this that helps, in this case, small businesses that really need it. So let's do this. Why don't we start kind of laying the groundwork for the kind of applications you guys have gotten? Let's give them a flavor of where from across the state are you getting these requests? What have you learned about the businesses that have been funded so far? What's the demographic makeup of the business you've funded so far? So why don't you kind of lay some of that out there?
Sure. Go first.
Yeah, sure. It's the applications have literally come from every corner of the state, large metropolitan areas like Biloxi, Gulfport, Jackson, and then small communities, some of which I sort of were familiar with. Lake Mississippi, had to look that up on a map, and then the diversity of businesses is truly astounding. And the greatest thing is being able to watch the videos that the applicants submit, because you get a real, and this was intentional and it's played out very well, you get a real sense of what their business is about, what their needs really are, and then just the passion that these business owners have for their businesses, of how they, it's the lifeblood of their family and how much it means to giving back to their community. We had one applicant that was awarded the grant in Meridian. She has a retail store that only sells Mississippi-made products and goods. So in addition to helping her keep her retail store open, it trickled down to help all these other artisans and other folks that make products that are only sold, that have a Mississippi brand to them stay afloat too. So it's been really inspiring to see the heart and soul of Mississippi small business owners.
Yeah, I've had through this show the opportunity to be compelled by some of the stories I'm hearing. I'll give you an example, like some artists that I've talked to. Their incredible work and their creativity and the fact that they've been impacted so severely by the pandemic, you can't help but want to help them. I thought it was really cool that you guys made a requirement of the application to send a video. That's essentially like using Zoom or Skype, just like we were talking about a few minutes ago. You actually get to see, as you pointed out, Brian, their passion for what they do. And man, I mean, small business is what makes Mississippi tick. That's where innovation happens. That's where art and soul and so much of what makes this a special place sort of bears itself out. You see that in these videos, don't you?
Do. Yeah.
So what made you require the video? I think that was a great dimension of the application process.
Well, we knew we had to find a way to learn more about the applicant. We do the right things. If you're someone who's considering donating, we do all the right things. We ask if it's a Mississippi business, a resident. We ask for documentation, and our MBA and our law students do all the paperwork for us. But then we wanted to see the human side. We wanted to make sure that we heard from the applicant of why we can be helpful to them. And a lot of times what we're doing before we make the award is we FaceTime the potential applicant, or we call them and we ask a little bit more about how things are going for them. And so that has really helped us decide how we can fund some of these from a priority standpoint.
Well, that's terrific. This is Marie and Brian Sanderson. They're local entrepreneurs that work across the United States. And during this COVID situation, they've worked to implement the Mississippi 30-Day Fund here in Mississippi that is providing funds to small businesses that are struggling in the pandemic. When we come back from the break, we'll continue the conversation. There's a huge wait list. We'll talk about what those companies look like, where the funding is coming from, and the application process. There's a lot still to talk about. We'll see you right after this break.
SuperTalk. Nobody keeps Mississippi informed like we do. With 12 stations covering all 82 counties. If it happens in your state, we're on top of it. The news, the weather, the sports, and the talk that's important to you. The issues that matter to you, your family, and your bank account. It's all right here. And when you're away from home, depend on the SuperTalk app and supertalk.fm to stay in the know. We're proud to serve our fellow Mississippians. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
This is House Call for Health. There may be no greater medical mystery and no greater tragedy than sudden infant death syndrome. It used to be known as crib death. For no apparent reason, a presumably healthy sleeping baby dies. Medical experts don't have clear-cut answers to what causes sudden infant death, or SIDS, but now they have two risk factors: smoking and drinking during pregnancy beyond the first 3 months. A new study finds that babies whose mothers drank alcohol and smoked tobacco after the first trimester are at far greater risk of SIDS, 12 times greater. Previous studies showed a risk of smoking and drinking individually. This study says doing both drastically increases the danger. The research is sponsored by the National Institutes of Health, which is calling for greater publicity about the danger and improved screening at the very beginning of a pregnancy. For more health news, go to foxnewshealth.com. House Call for Health. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News.
A lot of people are just worried about supplies.
Our supplies are getting pretty low, and that gives us great concern.
Aside from the PPE issues, they're really worried about if they are exposed and they have to be away from work for a certain amount of time.
We're going to need some money there. And so that's one way the public can support us as well, is keep sending money into that support fund.
What I really truly hope is that people don't forget that feeling right now of wanting to volunteer and give back to their community.
I hope this doesn't dramatically change the volunteer fire service.
Hey, want to come work for the #1 radio group on the coast? TeleSouth Media has a great opportunity for an outside sales consultant. Get paid while having fun and work in the exciting, fast-paced world of radio. We have award-winning stations like 97.9 CPR Rocks, 105.9 The Monkey, G96.7, SuperTalk 103.1, and 103.5 The Possum. Take the first step towards a new and rewarding career. Submit your resume to Jesse@telesouth.com. That's JESSE at telesouth.com. TeleSouth Media is an equal employment opportunity employer.
Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We have Marie and Brian Sanderson, local entrepreneurs. As I mentioned, they do policy work across the country and live in Ocean Springs. And they have brought an incredibly, very important idea to Mississippi called the Mississippi 30-Day Fund. It's a nonprofit where 100% of the proceeds that come into this fund go out to small business. No administration fees at all. Through volunteers and Brian and Marie's hard work, they're able to make sure that no dime is spent on administration. And how can you argue with that? So why don't we do this? I want to ask a lot of statistics about the application process, how many are in process and all that. But one of the things I mentioned before we went to the break was about the demographics of the funds that have been distributed so far, the businesses that are owned. What have you learned so far about who those folks are?
So we found that they're largely women-owned businesses, which was a little bit of a surprise to me. But a lot of women-owned businesses, majority have been African-American owned businesses, and again, regional diversity from across the state. And it's been really interesting. And again, all shapes and sizes of businesses. Our requirement is that an applicant must be between 3 and 30 employees. I probably think on average, the average number of employees that one of these businesses has is around 10. So they're not large. A lot of them have part-time workers. Some of them, 1099, they're workers, and we take that into account as well in the review process.
As you know, one of the big programs that came down from the federal government was called the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP program. A lot of businesses applied and were able to keep their employees on for an extended period of time. And essentially the way it worked was if you keep your employees on your payroll for that specified period of time, that you would not have to pay that grant back. What have you found about the businesses that have applied so far as it relates to whether they were able to get PPP funds or not?
Well, I'll make 2 points about that. One is to the applicants, and one is regarding our donors. On the applicant side, we found that about 60% of the people that have applied did not receive the PPP program. And we also ask if they received state funding, and they have to tell us whether or not they've received that or intend to receive state funding. That in itself does not disqualify someone from receiving our resources, but we are taking a look at if someone received significant PPP, then they're probably not as high up on our wait list as someone who has not received those monies. But we do keep them on our list for us to provide help. But I will say, I think what that shows us from a policy standpoint is that some of the applicants who had a good banker or access to capital were the first to receive those monies. And so we've talked to donors, right, on the professional service side whose accountants told them to apply for these funds. But at this point in time in 2020, their business is as good or better than it was last year. And so we're encouraging some of those businesses who might have received those funds to pay it forward and put it in our fund so we can deploy it back out to people who really need it. And so if you're listening and you got those monies, but you're having an okay year and you can pay it forward, we're a great fund to do so, to get it back out to some of the people who didn't get those resources.
So as you pointed out, I mean, the PPP funds were administered largely by local banks or community banks. And so if you didn't have a banking relationship, you may not have understood how the process works. So that may be one reason why you didn't get the funds. It may be just a one-man show, 1 or 2 man show. You don't have a bunch of employees and you didn't really understand whether or not the PPP program actually applied to you. But oftentimes it's really just them not having sort of an intermediary between themselves and the federal government to sort of guide them through the process. And I would say that probably the more money that was at risk, in other words, banking relationship with a small business, probably the quicker you were able to get in line to receive the PPP funds. I get that, and that's part of the process, and doesn't mean that anything wrong. It just means as a result of that, some very small businesses probably weren't first in line, or maybe didn't think they applied or qualified for the PPP funds. 60%, that's a high number. And what it says that maybe, hopefully there's a learning about in future situations like this, that we not leave out an entire, population of businesses. Most small businesses are really small. I mean, a small business can have multiple employees, or it can have 0 employees other than the person who's actually running the business. That's what you found, isn't it?
Yeah. It's really, kind of stay true to what we knew statistically about Mississippi's small businesses, that they're the heartbeat of our state's economy. And, the videos and the applications have really borne that out.
So let's do this. Let's continue the process as it relates to the funding and the application process. So when someone submits, a small business submits their application, what happens after that? Who is the person who evaluates that, and how do they decide whether they're going to get funded or not?
So the first line of review are the MBA students at Mississippi State and the law students at Ole Miss. And there's probably about 35 of those. And it's kind of whoever logs in and sees applications ready to be reviewed will take that initial first glance to see, is there proof that this is a real business? Is there maybe a social media presence? Do they have an EIN? Can we find them on the Secretary of State's business search website? And then they look at their application to see how many employees they have, what their needs are, what type of business they are. And then they'll recommend, yes, continue to review these. And then our executive director, Julia Grant, will do a second review sort of along the same lines. And then it'll come to us to make, that third review cycle. And then ultimately it's passed on by the National Board of Directors, but they usually, in every instance, trust our initial review.
So it's interesting because there are limited funds, so you literally have to prioritize. As I mentioned, you've got a lot of people on the waiting list, and I think you had an initial goal of $300,000 raised. How much have you raised so far?
Sure. Well, through the charitable gifts of many people on the Gulf Coast and around the state, we've raised over $100,000 so far. We are cautiously optimistic that the path to 300,000, which you're right was our short-term goal to fund 100 businesses, is within reach. We have some announcements we'll be making in the next couple of weeks. We've been working with national foundations and some state charitable foundations, as well as some companies across the state, and that's more of a lengthy process when they consider charitable giving. But we're finding that people are really interested in what we're doing, because if you're a business and you want to support your local community, the best way to do that is to deploy dollars to small businesses. So that's promising. Long term, we certainly hope to raise even more than that. And as we mentioned, we are aggressive in doing so and are committed to our wait list to try and to fund everybody as much as we can.
So we'll come back to more information about how to contribute, and we'll talk about the kind of businesses that are involved. But let's stay with the reason I wanted to bring that up now is simply to say that there's a limited amount of funds available, and you guys are having to prioritize the applications. And I know it's got to be difficult. You probably are learning some things about Mississippi and the amazing people of Mississippi that you didn't know before, and it probably gives you even more desire, more fire in your eye to try to figure out a way to meet their needs. Is that true?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I can only imagine what that learning looks like. So they can get $3,000, and somebody who owns a big business may look at that and say, that can't make much of a difference. But it can literally save someone's business, can it? Tell us a couple of stories about where you've seen that is very compelling.
You want to tell one about embellish?
Sure. Well, I mean, $3,000 does matter, and it's meant that we're called the Mississippi 30-Day Fund. 30 days is meant to be the amount of time $3,000 could sustain a business. We know we're not
rent, utilities.
Right. We know we're not going to be a silver bullet, but there was one call we made to one of our businesses. It's a wedding planning company. She's a woman-owned business, African American, the northern part of the state, and she answered her phone. We did a video call with her, and she was sitting amongst all of her decorations. She had flowers and vases and chairs, and she had to let go her storage unit for all of these supplies instead of letting go an employee. And she was tearful and so excited about what we were able to provide to her, because she was doing everything she could to squeeze every dollar to make sure she kept her employees on. And she was tearful, and we cried. And it can't help you but to double down in your efforts to help these people. Another gentleman used our equipment to shore up his barbershop, to buy plexiglass and cleaning supplies. And this gentleman actually was diagnosed with COVID, so he opened back up, got diagnosed with COVID, had to shut his operation back down again, so he was hit twice. And so this $3,000 is helping him.
So it's interesting, because if you've helped this small business, I don't know if either of the two that you just mentioned this applies to, but it has to have an indirect impact on their families. Tell me about that. What have you learned about that?
Oh yeah, I mean that in many of the videos, and some of it's you would think this would be the case anyway, but the videos really express how the families, this is their sole source of income, and that their family's livelihood is dependent on the small business's success, and so obviously the well-being of their children is helped that way too.
This is Brian and Marie Sanderson from the Mississippi 30-Day Fund. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation about how it's going. See you after the break.
The Dean's List with Janice Dean.
A compassionate young man who became a dinner companion for a stranger makes today's Dean's List. Lisa Mealander and her family had been eating at the Eaton Park in Belle Vernon, Pennsylvania, when she noticed how her server was interacting with a senior patron. The server, Dylan Teetle, had dropped to one knee so he could give his full attention to the gentleman. Lisa wrote on Facebook, "The man apologized for not hearing well, and he talked about how he lost his hearing during the war. He was 91 years old with many stories to tell, and Dylan patiently listened, giving him his full attention. He also helped the man figure out a meal from the menu before putting the order into the kitchen." Lisa tried to flag Dylan down so she could offer to pay for the man's meal. Dylan said someone else had already taken care of the check. Before leaving her table, Lisa snapped pictures of Dylan chatting with the senior and published them to Facebook, where they have been since shared thousands of times. Thank you, Dylan, for your kindness, and Lisa for sharing this story with all of us. Janice Dean, Fox News.
Thousands of Bulldog fans have subscribed to the Thunder and Lightning podcast. Have you? On each episode, Brian Haydad and Joel Coleman give you an inside look at your Mississippi State Bulldogs. The Thunder and Lightning podcast is free and available on demand at SuperTalk.fm and on your smartphone. Just search for Thunder and Lightning on iTunes, Google Play, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thunder and Lightning from SuperTalk, Mississippi. Covering the Bulldogs like no one else. Staying informed is a full-time job, even more so during an election year. That's why SuperTalk is here. With Fox News, News Mississippi, and the Super Talkers, you'll go inside the campaigns, and we'll separate what's real from what's not to bring you the latest information that matters. From now until you go into the voting booth on November 3rd, your election headquarters is Super Talk, Mississippi. Available on the Super Talk app and at supertalk.fm. From the Gallo Radio Show archives.
In the house, Mike Hurst.
When I started at the end of 2017, sadly, our office had gotten so low during the last administration. I think in FY16, we prosecuted 11 illegal immigration cases, 11, which is embarrassing. First year I was there, we had jumped almost 700% to 77 prosecutions. And Paul, that number I think is going to increase very much more this year. We are continuing to see illegal immigration impact crime around the state. I'll give you a perfect example. About a month ago, we prosecuted an illegal alien who had brought 9 kilos of heroin and 1 kilo of fentanyl through our state. Now, to give your listeners an idea of what 2.2 pounds of fentanyl will do, that will wipe out 1 million people, Paul. That'll wipe out 1/3 of our state.
This has been another Gallo Radio Show audio archive. What decisions are being made by state lawmakers, and how will they affect you, your family, and community? If you listen, you'll know. SuperTalk Mississippi, the SuperTalk app, and at supertalk.fm.
Hi, I'm Billy Kinder, host of Big Billy Kinder Outdoors here. The show Saturdays at 1, right here on SuperTalk Mississippi. Turkeys, whitetail, Grenada Lake crappie, or Gulfport redfish. We enjoy it all, especially when you're in camp with us on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We serve on the front lines, fighting an invisible enemy and caring for our communities with courage and compassion. The COVID-19 crisis has challenged us like never before. Now, the men and women of America's hospitals and health systems are counting on Congress and the administration to stand with us as we stand ready to care for you in every way, every day.
Get out of the house and over to Big Play today. 2 massive arcades, bowling, go-karts, 2 mini golf courses, a 2-story state-of-the-art laser tag arena, bumper cars, and right now get a $50 game card for only $25. Visit our station's Facebook and print on demand so you can play at Big Play Entertainment Center now. These deals won't last long, so make sure you get your half-off deal. Big Play Entertainment Center, Highway 90 Biloxi. Bowl, play, eat. Go to our station's Facebook to get your half-off deal now.
He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We have Brian and Marie Sanderson with us today. They are young leaders who have implemented a fund in Mississippi, a nonprofit called the Mississippi 30-Day Fund, where 100% of the proceeds go to small business. And we've been talking about the application process and what they're learning about the applicants, and so many applicants, so many stories, so many incredible stories. Each has their own compelling reason why they need the money. And $3,000 can literally save their business. It can help their family in ways that, someone who runs a big business can't fully appreciate. I mean, that's kind of the story, isn't it?
Absolutely. No.
So that's where we were at the beginning. I'm curious, you mentioned that there are community staples that have been saved. What do you mean by that?
So we've seen this more often than not. Through the videos that they submit. For instance, a restaurant in Macomb that has a Lazy Susan dining table. So literally people that come to the restaurant all sit together around the table, and the food is, passed around on the Lazy Susan. Clearly that, business has had hardship because people can't congregate that closely. But in the video, the owner talks about how much, it's been in business for decades, how many people come from far and wide and they're sort of world renowned to come there and have that experience. And so to try to help a business like that, you're helping a real piece of Mississippi's culture. And there are many, many other examples.
You mentioned a Mississippi product business in Meridian that was funded. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so that's Crooked Letter. In Meridian. It's a retail storefront, a retail shop, and she sells only products made in Mississippi by Mississippi businesses. So, everything from cheese straws to, I'm sure, McCarty pottery and a lot of, just interesting things from the coast, pottery from the coast. So, to be able to help her not only helps her storefront stay open, but also the vendors that she buys from and sells their products.
What about Coast View? So you've received applications from literally every county in Mississippi. What about the coast? How's that going?
Well, we've funded some coast restaurants, and one of them is over here in Ocean Springs. We publicized another one in Ocean Springs this weekend, Greenhouse on Porter, which serves custom biscuits and has beer and coffee. And it's a place, when we talk about community, I mean, their point was part of what makes their business special is the community, that someone orders a cup of coffee and they're very intentional about asking them how their day is going. It's a place. And so, this narrative of during COVID, people have lost the ability to interact with strangers and other people. And so they felt their revenues were down, and they were very honest about that, but they missed the service to people that they provide. We have another coffee shop that we funded in the northern part of the state. It's called Fill My Cup Coffee Shop, and their priority is to take in women who have had a history of drug abuse. So they take in these women and they serve as employees, and it's a place where these people can go and have support for each other to recover. So you talk about the effects of some of these awards we've made. It's not just keeping a small business, but it's keeping the community intact, a sense of place, and there are all these other benefits to some of the businesses that we're able to find.
Isn't it amazing the kind of people that it takes to make a community go? I mean, the kind of passions they have. Some are doing it through just pure innovation, creating new products, might be an artist. Some are combining their business goals with meeting a need in the community, like you just mentioned, women with drug abuse issues. Man, that's so inspiring, isn't it? I mean, there's so many of those stories in this state, and they've all been impacted in one way or another by the coronavirus. I wish that we could, grab every business that got PPP money and their experience turned out much better than they expected, and somehow get them to see the faces. I had a great conversation with Kiva Scott from the Boys and Girls Club, and one of the things we talked about is when you see the kids' faces, it's hard to say no to volunteering. It's hard to say no to not wanting to help them, because you're creating this a safe environment for them that gives them an opportunity to really achieve things in life that they would not have otherwise been able to do. And I feel the same way about these videos with these applications, getting to see these small business owners and their passion and their determination to want to stay in business, and how just a few $100s could really make the difference for them. I mean, I can't overstate that, can I? It makes that much difference.
It does. There's a gym owner in Vicksburg. Her business is called Shape Up Sister. She started it after her sister passed away because of health issues, obesity and other things. So she founded this gym to help other women lead healthier lives. And of course, she's had obstacles because of gyms not being able to operate at full capacity. And she was very, very thankful and thinks this will give her a bridge to stay open and continue to help more women in the Vicksburg community.
That's why I think your message to those who receive PPP money, if their experience turned out to be much better than they expected, then consider paying it forward. Find a way to do this using an organization like the Mississippi 30-Day Fund, where 100% of the contributions you make are going to go to the small businesses that we're talking about today. What kind of businesses have you found? Have you seen a wide range of businesses that are interested in this? Is there a pattern around those that are contributing?
There's no pattern, Ricky. I mean, we have funded a gym. We have funded a truck service that trucks products. We funded a pediatric rehabilitation facility in Canton. Talk about indirect benefit, that serves children. We have a lot of child care applicants, and we're working to try and fund those because obviously if mom or dad can go to work and they know their child is cared for, then that's a double benefit to their family and to the community. We have had a lot of barbershops. We had a gentleman who sold gaming products in central Mississippi. I think it was in Brandon. And so we were able to fund him. But there's one common denominator. These business owners are scrappy, they're tenacious, but they're super thankful. We've yet to call someone who is just aloof. And I think you can tell a lot about someone that you fund by the tone of their voice and the way they react when you tell them about the money. And we're continue to feel like there's definitely a place for charitable giving in this space based on who we're seeing and the conversations we're having. And
this is not a typical, if you think about the nonprofit makeup of the typical community, where you have United Way and the community foundations and all these different nonprofits, and their goals are to help the community fill gaps where there may be gaps. And, it really does take a village to make a community work, the old 1,000 points of light, so to speak. But there really wasn't and isn't a natural nonprofit that would be used for this purpose. This is not. Have you found any organization that is doing something like this? I mean, where would they normally go to for assistance in a situation like this, outside of, say, the government and a PPP program?
Right. I mean, it's, the chambers obviously do a good job of getting the word out for PPP and the Back to Business Mississippi program, and they've been very supportive of this effort. But you're right, there's not a natural vehicle that says we're going to take in funding just for this purpose and deploy it quickly. So I think it is unique in our state, certainly, and we wouldn't be able to do it without the infrastructure that was already built by the national organization.
Well, I mean, if you think about the United Way and the various organizations that it funds, and this taking more of an outcomes-based approach where they're measuring to make sure that the impact on the community is what they intend it to be because there's limited funds, et cetera. Who would ever even think that we would need something like this? A pandemic, hope to goodness, is a once-in-a-lifetime situation that we've got to find a way to work through. But at the end of the day, I mean, hopefully people who want to help fill this particular gap, who want to pay it forward, who has influence in foundations that could provide funding for this. I mean, literally with so many applications, the Mississippi 30-Day Fund needs hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And I hope that people will be compelled by the story and say, I'm going to do my part to influence my networks to make a difference. So for those who have given, that's what they've done, right?
That's right. We've had a lot of people give. Every amount counts. We've had a lot of seen an increase in small donors. We're going to continue to talk to foundations. Brian and I, throughout our careers, surround ourselves with people who are smarter than we are, and the Mississippi 30-Day Fund is no exception. We've talked to the community foundations across the states, SBDCs. We've put a lot of people on our board who know what they're doing. And so we're continuing to surround ourselves with people who could help us really make sure we're getting to the right Mississippians with the right amount of assistance at the right time. We were not intending to stand up for several weeks, but as long as there's a pandemic, we're going to try and provide a solution.
Maureen, Brian, let's do this. What I was going to do in this next segment is just review some of the headlines that are out there, but there's sufficient more to talk about as it relates to this. Why don't y'all hang around and let's talk a little bit more about where we are and where we're heading and how people can help you when we come back after this break.
Listen live or on demand and watch episodes of Coast View on your laptop, desktop, or on your phone or tablet by going to supertalkmsgulfcoast.com.
Be sure to go by this station's website and check out the half-off deals. Audubon Zoo tickets for just $15. That's half price. $30 zoo tickets for just $15. Again, go to this station's website or Facebook. Look for the half-off deals logo to purchase yours now.
Hey, I'm Steve Azar, and you never know who or what you'll hear when I spend a Mississippi Minute with my friends. We are with the fabulous Norbert Putnam as he played on so many hit records, you can't count them, and produced for some of the biggest acts ever. Norbert, Elvis.
And I want to tell you about Presley. He had two different voices. He would sit and talk to me in a very calm, low voice. And we were at Stack's one night, and we were having lunch. We always had lunch at midnight because he was nocturnal. We sat there and we have our sandwiches, and at 1 o'clock, he looked up. He said, "Hey, Put, come on, it's time for me to go be Elvis." And he stood up, in a much deeper voice, he put on his macho voice. "Hey, fellas, it's 1 o'clock. Let's get cracking, okay?"
In a Mississippi Minute. Be sure to check out In a Mississippi Minute with me, Steve Azar, right here on SuperTalk Mississippi, Amazon Alexa, and now on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher.
This is House Call for Health. Medical researchers spend years developing drugs to treat cancer, but it's possible the next big cancer-fighting breakthrough could already be in your medicine cabinet. Scientists have long known that a drug for one ailment can sometimes be effective in treating something else. Aspirin is the most famous example. Researchers at Harvard, MIT, and the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute tested more than 4,500 existing medications. They found 48 drugs that killed at least some cancer cells. These drugs are for several different conditions, including diabetes, inflammation, and alcoholism. One drug is used for treating arthritis in dogs. Researchers in the journal Nature Cancer said the medications sometimes worked in different ways than mainstream cancer drugs. Now they hope these drugs can be further developed into true new weapons against cancer. For more health news, go to foxnewshealth.com. House Call for Health. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News.
You could be spreading the coronavirus without realizing you have it, so do your part and stay home. It's important to limit in-person interaction with anyone outside of your immediate household, but phone and video chat are safe ways to connect. It's also important to limit social gatherings. If you need essential items like food and medicine, try using a delivery service. If you must leave your house for essential items, or if you want to take a walk for exercise, make sure to wear a cloth face covering. Stay at least 6 feet away from other people. Try not to touch frequently touched surfaces like light signals, street signs, or benches. And wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds as often as possible. This advice applies to people of any age, including teens and younger adults. It takes all of us to slow the spread of the coronavirus, so stay home unless absolutely necessary. Visit coronavirus.gov for the latest information.
If a muckety-muck wants you to hear what they got to say, they come here first and sit down with Gallo and JT. This is ground zero for all Mississippi muckety-mucks. SuperTalk Mississippi. Watch your favorite SuperTalk shows in HD. Just go to supertalktv.com. Ever wonder what goes on in the studio during the shows? Now you can watch what happens in HD. SuperTalk TV, streaming now on supertalktv.com.
Everyone knows the only thing better than pizza is free pizza, and right now, buy a $10 gift certificate to CiCi's Pizza for only $5. It's like buying a pizza and getting a pizza for free. Go to our station's website or Facebook. Look for the Half Off Deals logo to purchase this amazing deal right now.
Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Matthews on Super Talk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We have Marie and Brian Sanderson, who launched the Mississippi 30-Day Fund in Mississippi, and it's been awesome talking to you guys as I learn more about sort of the same kind of thing that I saw after Katrina, which is to say, after the storm, when you get involved, you begin to see how many needs there were. I mean, on every dimension, we were challenged. And you can't launch something like a Mississippi 30-Day Fund and not be impacted by it personally, by hearing the stories and seeing the needs. Let's kind of go through some of the numbers real quick. Number of small businesses that have been funded so far, 29. 57% of those are women-owned. 52% of those are African-American-owned. There's a wait list of 580. That's why these big partnerships for fundraising are so important. And that's why every single dollar given to this fund is important, no matter how small it is. There are over 700 applications now in process. And so let's look real quick at the types of businesses that are being impacted. Animal husbandry, children events, bakery, catering, barber, salons, catering, coffee shops, dance studios, art studios, event planning, gyms, karate, medical supply, pediatric therapy, record stores, restaurants, retail, trophy shops, trucking, video production, wedding supplies, and literally from just about every city in Mississippi. There are not normal processes in place in each community to help businesses under situations like this. We needed a Mississippi 30-Day Fund to be able to handle this. 60% of the applicants did not participate in the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP program, which means that the needs are significant. And one of the most important things we talked about is that these are small businesses where $3,000 can literally save their business, So what's your current thinking about your pitch to people who might consider giving?
I would say this: a small business is an extension of most people if they own a small business. They've poured their livelihood. A lot of these people have poured their savings into this business. So it's their job. It's how they pay for their family. It's how they support their employees. And so if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a philanthropist, if you're in a position at a business in Mississippi, we have to take care of our own. We have to provide an opportunity for people to go to work and to sustain their business, because that's who we are and that's what makes up our state. And so we're really pushing people to give so we can help some of these businesses that are struggling, and it's a lot of it's industry based during these times.
Yeah, so one of the things that you can't help but think about, and I know it makes it harder, after Katrina, we dealt with Katrina fatigue. People just got tired of hearing about it. But is COVID fatigue an issue that you're facing?
We think it is. I mean, we hear that from businesses that may be in a position to give, and businesses that are still struggling to be open, of just when is this going to be over with? And unlike Katrina, where we knew the devastation, we're able to assess that in a fairly short order of time. This is sort of an ongoing process. And unlike Katrina, where the eyes of literally the world were on us because there's Louisiana, Mississippi affected, every other state is experiencing these same dynamics to some degree, some worse than Mississippi, obviously. And so it's really important in these times that we as Mississippians, as Marie said, take care of our own. And if you think of, well, I've got a friend that works with this national foundation that may have some interest in helping out Mississippi, let us know. We're happy to do the heavy lifting of calling and filling out the grant applications. We just need folks to connect those dots for us, and whether that's in the state or outside the state.
People often ask, when you get an effort like this, what's behind it? What's really behind it? Mm-hmm. Is there some political motivation? Is there some money motivation? What's the pitch here? Well, there's no motivation except to help small business. There's no trick. There's no spin here. If you go and watch any of these videos, you'll get hooked. Just like we talked about with the Boys and Girls Club and the kids, and looking the kids in the face. You can't help but be compelled by the need. I mean, we just said between applications and application process, over 1,000 businesses still hope that they would find a way to get prioritized with this fund and get some funding. And there's such an opportunity to pay it forward. There's in more ways than one. As we begin to sort of wind down the conversation, Marie, kind of what's your final pitch to? Well, it's not your final pitch because you're not leaving this. I mean, it was going to be a short-term event, and it turned into this longer-term thing because COVID's sort of like this hurricane where the eye of the storm's sitting on top of us, and we don't yet know what's on the other side of this. But you guys are sort of into this for the long haul now. But what's your pitch?
I mean, I would say this. We got involved because we felt like we could do this. Brian and I are in similar professions, and we know how to run and set up things like this. It's a lot more work than we anticipated, candidly. But we are connecting with people all over the state. And if you're watching this and you want to get involved, our advisory board is growing. We take phone calls from people who want to help, who want to offer advice, who want to give us a lead on someone who might donate. We're doing this nationally. We're calling on some national contacts who might be interested in giving to Mississippi. And so we are really making ourselves available to talk to anyone who wants to help, so we can pay it forward.
Well, I'm so proud of you two, and I'm privileged to be working with you in some small way. And we'll keep the spotlight on this effort, and we'll do everything in our power to help the over 1,000 businesses that need our help. So with that said, thank you guys for your leadership and appreciate your time.
Thanks, Ricky.
You bet. Have a great day.